I'm good is probably the greatest lie we tell anybody about our mental health. Anybody asks you how you're doing, you typically say, I'm good. And that has to be good enough. I've worked in EMS for about 18 years now in a variety of places, including I've recently added Fortune Bay EMS to the bottom. But I'm good is a lie we tell everybody, and it masks our feeling and it keeps us from talking about what's really bothering us. That's a little bit of a history of myself. I've been involved in heavy industry for about 47 years. I've been in EMS for a long time. I was an armor crewman and a nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare specialist. I'm a pilot, and it's an outdated term, but I've considered myself what we used to call a man's man, except I found myself crying about stuff all the dang time. And to a guy who considers himself tough and prides him on his ability to fight and my absolute inability to walk away from a fight, that was really hard on my ego. Trauma will build up in your body. It might be from childhood abuse, it might be from things you've seen and done, things you were part of. It builds up in your body. The deal that we're going to talk about today was, in my case, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. In itself, it probably wasn't that devastating, although it was terrible, but it was just one thing too many that when I had not taken care of any of the other things that were bothering me, these all built up. So my body, like the book says, my body was keeping score of the amount of trauma that I'd been absorbing and never dealing with. Men have this, particularly men, have this suck it up mentality where we don't talk about things, we don't show our emotions, but unfortunately the suck it up mentality is killing people. So April 28th, 2021 was a day that will live on in infamy for me. Roosevelt, of course, called December 7th, 1941, a day that will live on in infamy. But this was the day I was called upon to assist with the rescue of a child. When you're in EMS, rescuing a child is exciting. It's kind of what you live for. You get to be a hero for a moment. But unfortunately, the rescue pretty quickly turned into a recovery, and things went downhill from there. I'd been off work for about a week on vacation, and so I'd come in early that day. I was on midnight shift from 7 to 7. I'd come in early that day to see what had changed in the pit and what was no longer the same from when I last left it. I'm an EMR. I was the only manager on site. When we got called by the Virginia Fire Department to assist, that was exciting for me. But that excitement was very short-lived because shortly into the call, we got told, you can slow down, this is no longer a rescue, this is a recovery. It went from a rescue to recovery. Things went from bad to worse, and I went from being relatively healthy to suicidal. It's not something I enjoy talking about. Frankly, this is the first time I've been nervous talking to a group in probably 30 or 40 years. I'm good is what I told my therapist. I'm good is what I told my wife. I'm good is what I told my family, my friends, my boss. I really wasn't good, though. I knew I was lying to him. I didn't realize I was dying at the time on a slow progression. Untreated, my depression went from bad to worse. I went from being relatively healthy to being relatively suicidal. I went from having suicidal thoughts to actually detailed plans, when, how, where I was going to do it, and how I could do it without embarrassing my family. That was big to me because I didn't want them to know that their father, their grandfather, etc., took his own life. So I came up with a plan that I was going to do it on my motorcycle. But trauma builds up, and I'll get to the motorcycle in a bit. But trauma builds up in a lot of different ways from a lot of different people. These are not necessarily for me, my particular case, but trauma builds up. It might be financial issues. It might be current or past addictions. It might be abuse or neglect. Trauma comes in an awful lot of flavors and sizes. On the other hand, people have a tendency to give too much of their time. I'm constantly volunteering for things. I show up for everything. I have to fix everybody's problems. I have to care about everybody. It's kind of innate in who I am. And what happened was, the cup that was filling up with all my problems and the bowl that was being emptied of all my energies collided. And then my therapist told me point blank she was surprised I'd lived as long as I had. On a less than a little bit humorous note, she would ask me one of the things she said, well, what else have you gone through in your life? And I told her one thing, and she goes, holy shit, pardon my language, but when you stump a therapist, that makes you wonder just what level of stress you've arrived at. I had this gap between life and death, this ever-changing gap. As I look at it, these are the reasons why I wanted to commit suicide. These are the reasons why I can't commit suicide. And this gap would open and close. I want to, but I can't embarrass my family, so there's a big gap. But then I thought, if I did it on my motorcycle, everybody'd think, hey, that's really cool. It's a shame he's gone, but he died doing what he loves best. So that gap got really narrow. But then I thought, I can't lay this amount of trauma on some poor first responder I was going to do it up toward Effie, a nice little square corner with some big red pines. I can't put trauma on somebody else and inflict the same pain on them that I'm suffering from. So I thought, now that gap got wider again. But then I thought, I wear the best motorcycling gear that you can possibly buy. It's all tailor fit for this short, fat body. I'm in about $3,000 worth of gear when I'm riding. So then I thought, I'll die of blunt force trauma, but I'm not going to be a mess for the first responders. So then I thought, okay, well, now that gap got really narrow. At that point, I decided the date, the time, the place, when I was going to leave work, how I was going to get there, what I was going to think about on the way up there. But then that gap changed again. I thought, well, wait a minute, what if this $3,000 in motorcycling gear that I'm riding saves my life, and now my wife has to feed me with a straw the rest of my life and wipe my butt? Somewhere in this I hit a moment of reasoning where I thought, okay, this is stupid. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. And at that point, I decided I'd get help. And so this is where it goes from a story of woe to a story of encouragement. So that was my goal. That's my motorcycle speedometer. Comes real good from a safety manager. Riding down the road in one hand, taking a picture with your cell phone in the other of your speedometer at 123 miles an hour. But that's a red pine like the one I was going to pile into. But I decided I couldn't do this anymore. I reached a point where I thought, okay, I've got to get help. I've got everything to live for. I don't know why I'm submitting myself or putting myself through this. So just talk a little bit more about suicide. Suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the U.S. right now. There's approximately 1.7 million attempts per year. There's 130 suicides a day. 80%, if I got my numbers right, 80% are typically middle-aged white men, which was the crowd I was hanging with most of the time. We use firearms more than half of the time, and I'm a firearms instructor, so I have more than ample supply of guns in my house if this is how I wanted to do it. Women do attempt suicide more often, but they use less lethal means. So we are better at that than women. We're better at succeeding at this than women, so we got that going for us. Being that I'm in EMS, EMS, law enforcement, and firefighters, this is the leading cause of death for these groups. More people more in these groups die from suicide than line of duty accidents, police shooting, firemen dying in fires, etc. So some signs of depression that you can look for in people. Maybe sad or empty moods, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll just let you look through them. Substance abuse, or the inability or increased crying. That was really troubling to me. Again, I consider myself tough, so to find myself crying over the stupidest stuff was really eating at me. Thoughts of suicide or different plans or different attempts. I've definitely been there. So thinking about suicide are some of the warning signs. Maybe you're having a sense of purposelessness, not having any reason to want to go on. Maybe you're feeling trapped or angry when you normally wouldn't feel angry. I had felt quite hopeless. I didn't know how I was going to keep going the way I was going. And there's a strange irony with suicide. It's not that you want to die, it's just that you don't want to live anymore. And I know it sounds like it's a little bit contradictory, but it wasn't that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to keep going the way I was going. Excuse me. Anxiety wasn't really one of my problems. Recklessness definitely was. High speeds make me happy. I'm happiest when my speedometer's in 3 digits. And I can't, that was obviously not good for an old person like me. Some more signs you might see are things like mood disturbances, talking about being hopeless or helpless. Preoccupation with death was definitely there. That was an everyday thought. One of the things you can watch for with people, at the bottom point, is suddenly they become happier or calmer. And let's just say you've been talking to a friend who you think is suicidal, and you've been trying to encourage them, and you've been trying to pump them up a little bit, and then you realize they've reached a point where all of a sudden they're happier, and you think, hey, I'm gaining ground on this. This is working for me. This guy is doing better. Unfortunately, what's often the case is they've decided, I'm going to go ahead and complete suicide next week, as an example, and now they know that the stresses of life are going to go away from them. The troubles they're facing are going to be gone. So if someone becomes happier or more calm, be more alert, spend more time with them. Suicide rates, and I've adapted this program for you, for this community, suicide rates are 3 times higher amongst the Native American community than they are the population at large in the U.S. It makes it especially pertinent to working at Fortune Bay and working with the community that I work with. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and this is from the National Association for Mental Illness. There's a lot of misunderstandings about suicide. Is that fear of talking about it will cause it to happen. I'm an absolute opposite of that. I think that talking about it will help it not to happen. The belief that people are suicidal or just having a difficult time and it will pass. Mental health is mental health. It is not a character flaw. It is not a weakness. It is an illness. You wouldn't tell somebody with cancer, oh, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not so bad. Somebody's got it worse than you, but we tend to treat mental illness this way, and we do the people that are suffering a great disservice. So I've always answered, hey, how are you doing? I'd say I'm good, but what can you say to somebody, or how can we answer if we don't want to, lie to anybody anymore? We can say things like, hey, I'm going through some stuff, or something's been bothering, thanks for asking, work has been stressing me out, or my family's been stressing me out, or my bills are stressing me out. There's things we can say. I'm having one of those days, well, weeks actually. There's ways we can talk about it without coming right out and saying we're suicidal, and things we can do to help destigmatize suicide. Labels don't let us see the humanity of people. If we call somebody who is suffering from mental illness, if we say they're schizo, if we say they're wacko or they're loony, or we have all sorts of negative terms for mental illness, we don't ascribe those kind of terms to somebody with cancer. We don't have negative connotation or negative terms that we apply to heart disease. We don't have negative terms that we apply to any other illness, but for some reason, we seem to attack mental illness. Who's going to want to talk about what they're going through if they're going to be labeled and given some nickname or made fun of? Or we don't say we're going to take you down to the Mayo Clinic, we're going to send you to the nut ward, the loony bin, the padded room. We make it very, very negative. We have to break this stigma about mental health and start realizing that mental health is an illness. It is not a weakness. It's not a bad habit. While a broken bone or a muscle tear or something is on a structural level, mental illness is in a molecular level in your brain, but it is still an illness. It is still a portion of your body functioning in a way that it wasn't meant to function. But there is hope and there is help, and that's probably the key part of this meeting. 988 replaced the old 888-273-TALK. 988 is a mental health hotline. From there, they will direct you to veterans care. They will direct you to law enforcement care or EMS. That one number is the simplest way to get mental health care. The EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program that we have here at Fortune Bay, offers a lot of good resources. I'll let you see the numbers, but that's the healthcare services up at Nut Lake and here at Vermilion. Talk to Boys for It leadership. Come talk to me. Come talk to anybody. Don't sit in silence and suffer. Talk to your family and friends, but we have to start having a conversation about a real illness and not what we perceive it or what we've been told it's been for a long time. Some of the components of my recovery is I wrote a letter to my boss. One day at work, I was just absolutely stressed. I literally was spinning around in circles and couldn't function properly at work. And I just stuck my head in my boss's office and I said, Matt, I got to get out of here. I'll be back soon. He said, what's going on? I said, I'll tell you later. And so I went home and I wrote him a letter, everything was, what I'd been going through and where I was at. And me taking the time to put everything in writing helped me understand my thoughts better. To me, as you guys have noticed, I'm a little bit all over the place. I don't ever slow down. And my thoughts are like a car careening down a mountain road. But when I put my hands to the keyboard and start typing and have to organize my thoughts, it's like putting that car on a straight road and hitting the cruise control. So the letter to my boss not only explained to him why I left that day, but it helped me understand what I was going through. I ran the EAP program at the Minorca mine. I finally used it and got in touch with a therapist through that program. That lady from our EAP program referred me to a specialist who did a type of care called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That was basically miraculous for me, how well that worked. For a while, I had to move some of the stressors in my life. I stepped back from EMS for about 6 weeks, or 6 months. I couldn't take the chance that something else would trigger me again. I did get back in the saddle after taking a break, and that was also therapeutic once I'd stepped away a little bit. And then I did find out who the boy was. I mean, I knew who he was the whole time, but I got a letter to his parents. Basically, I wanted them to know that we treated their son the same way we would have treated one of our own kids or one of our own grandkids. It was important for me to communicate that with the family, and through a mutual friend, they were able to take that, and they said the family read it and appreciated the letter. So just some closing things. Suicide is not a weakness. It's not selfish. It's not the easy way out. Suicide is the final phase of a health crisis, and we really need to start looking at it as such and treating it that way. We need to avoid things like telling people, just cheer up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not so bad. We need to get away from downplaying it. We need to say what it really is. We need to encourage them. Hey, we'll get you the best help possible. If you don't want to go on, let me go with you. I'll take you there. I'll sit with you and we'll go through this together. You need to validate their feelings. What you're feeling sounds painful and difficult. I don't have the answers, but I'm here to listen. Let them know that you actually care and that you want them to get better from this health crisis that they're in. I understand that you're really struggling right now, and I'm here to listen. We are not here to judge. We're not here to diagnose. We're just there to listen. And if they're ready to make progress by seeing somebody, feel free to go with them or encourage them. You'll go with them. So some other things we can say, like, let's connect you with somebody who's trained to help. We have an EAP program here. I've seen the pamphlets and stuff for it. There is help available to all our employees, to all of us, to all of our families. We have good help available, and we need to make that available to people. One of the things we can do in a crisis is call that 988 number and talk to somebody right now in the immediate. Not schedule an appointment to talk about this next week or next month, but right now in the immediate. And if somebody is actually suicidal, it does not hurt. Times have changed. We're learning more about it. You are not going to do any harm by saying, hey, are you thinking about hurting yourself right now? Or if I leave you alone, are you going to harm yourself? And if you think they are, or they answer yes to that, don't leave them alone. Spend time with them and make sure they get the help that they need. So your story may help others. If anybody's willing to share their story with me, I'd like to hear it. I repeat the story as far as the circumstances. I won't use anybody's names. I won't use ages. I won't use genders. For the simple reason you said, oh, the guy at work was talking about this. He's an old white guy that's 67 years old and he's 5'2". That pretty much narrows the field. I am not going to betray anybody's confidence. 5'2" if I slept well. I'm not going to betray anybody's confidence, but I will talk to anybody at any time, 24/7. If my phone rings, I'm going to answer it. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.